Okay, hi everyone. This is our tutorial for Touch Designer for projection mapping. We're going to get straight into it. I've got the link in the description for where you can download your free version of Touch Designer. So once you've downloaded it and opened the software, it should look like this. To get started, we're just going to make a new project. We can go File, Create Project Folder. And if I just navigate to my teaching folder, 3D Fundamentals, I've made a Touch Designer folder, and I'll just pop it here. And I'm going to call it Projection Mapping. I'm going to call it Projection Mapping 2 because I've done this once before. I'll just hit Create. And then you can see that it's made this lovely folder structure, which should be a little familiar to you. You know, it's got a folder for all sorts of different components that we might need. Okay, so let's just hit save. The next thing I'm going to do, there's a few files that I want to put in there for my own use. I made them before. I'm just going to grab them from where I left them last time. Basically, I made a bunch of renders from my orthographic camera of the different objects in my scene. So coming straight from Blender. And this is going to be really useful for us so that we don't have to map all of these shapes point by point. We can actually just use these renders. So I'm just going to grab these and copy them. You can make these yourself. I think you should know how to make them by now. I'll just go into this new folder I've made and I'll put them in an image folder. Okay, fabulous. So let's jump into Touch Designer. I will try to do a little bit of an explanation as to how Touch Designer works, but you know, I might also point you to some other beginners tutorials that will give you a more comprehensive overview. First of all, using my mouse, which is here, I can left click and I can move around this, this canvas workspace. I can zoom in and out with my scroll wheel. And with right click, I can drag and select, and I'm actually going to drag and select everything here and hit delete. Okay, so I'm going to start with the projection mapping, and then I'll introduce some Touch Designer functions as we go. Okay, so first of all, on the side of your sort of window, you should have this palette here. And in the palette, it's got all sorts of pre-made components that can do some kind of more complex functions. And we're going to go into the component menu that's for mapping, and we're going to grab this thing here called Kantan Mapper. I'm going to left click, drag and drop it into my canvas. Okay, so now if I press the letter P, which is the parameter window, I can bring up all of its settings. And you know, if I just press P, that'll appear and disappear. Okay, so I'm going to open Kantan Mapper window. And you can see on the video on the left of my screen, I've got a projector set up, and it's pointing like a little bit down because I'm getting some of the floor of my area here, and also it's set as like a second desktop. It's not set as like a screen mirroring. So you can see it's like a different, if I put my mouse across, it's like a second desktop. Okay, so we just have to tell Kantan Mapper that that's the second desktop we're using. I'll leave the resolution at default because if you're using the free version, that's your maximum resolution. So first of all, I'll go to Window Options, I'll click that, and depending on whether you're using, your computer might have it set as the main monitor or the second monitor. If it's the main monitor, which is mine, it'll be set at 0, or if it's a second monitor, you might have to change that monitor there to 1. I'm going to leave mine at 0. Then I'm just going to go to the opening scale and hit Fill. That's all we need to change. I'll close that. And now I'm just going to click Toggle Output, and it should all go dark on the projection mapping. So that's good. What I'm going to do is show you the basic idea of how projection mapping works. So first of all, I'm going to create a freeform shape, this little cloud shape here. So I'm just going to click a bunch of points, maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I'll just click to finish. If it doesn't finish, you can also just click onto one of these tools and it will exit the freeform shape tool. Okay, so now we have this green shape. If I just go into this like shaded arrow, the shape selection tool, I'm going to move this shape onto the large vase that's in the middle of my sculpture, and I'm going to click on the handle edit, and I'm just going to really quickly like do a very rough map onto that one vase. So this is like a manual approach to projection mapping. I'm going to show you a faster way, but our method, because we've got all of our shapes in Blender, we don't need to do this kind of slower way, but really like for 2D projection mapping when you don't have like a 3D model of your surface, this will work as well. Okay, so I've kind of roughly mapped on. You can see behind the sculpture here, it's not mapped that well. We can see a lot of that green behind it, but you kind of get the point. So now what I want to show you is how we can get images and textures from Touch Designer onto these colorful shapes, because that's where kind of the magic happens. So I'll just close my Kantan mapping window, and then I'll just press P. I'll zoom out a little bit, scroll, make some space on the left. I'm going to double click, I'm going to add a constant. So when I double click, I get this op create dialog. Op just stands for operator. So very quickly, we have our comp operators, which are our components, like lights and cameras and geometry handlers and stuff like that. We won't be using much of this in this project. Top, T-O-P, stands for texture operator. Think of it like 2D pixel graphics, and that's a lot of what we're going to be using. Chop stands for channel operators. Think of them like signals, like numbers. SOPs is surfaces. Think of them like 3D objects. Matte are materials, you know, like the shaders or materials that you put on a 3D object, the same as in Blender. DAT, we'll use this a little bit later when we work with Arduino. This is sort of for handling data, and custom is things you make yourself. But let's start with top. I'm going to add a constant. And if you see that constant here, it's just given me a constant white pixel matrix. If I press P, you can see it's got the color set to 111. I can just, you know, set that to any color. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to middle mouse click just on this little connecty bit here, which will just automatically let me add another operator, and I'm going to add a null. Think about a null like an empty in Blender. But in Touch Designer, a null is important. It's kind of like an address, and I'll show you why this is really useful in a moment. So I'm going to name this null up here. I'm going to call it color_1. All right, so we're going to go back into the Kantan Mapper window. I'll open that window, and this time I'm going to put that texture here. In order to do that, I'm just going to type \project1 \color1. And then I just click this little cross, and that should appear. Why has it not appeared? It should be blue. Why are we not seeing blue? What have we done here? Project 1, color 1. Now, is that what I called it? Oh no, I called it color_1. Okay, well there's a nice lesson. If you make a spelling mistake, it won't work. There we go. Okay, so there's that blue. Fantastic. So now we can see that the blue has gone into our constant. Now, I want to show you why I used that null. So I'll just close the Kantan mapping window, and now I'm going to put in something different. I'll stay in the top world, and I'm going to type in noise into my filter and just grab a 2D noise, which looks like this. And what I can do really quickly is I can just connect that to color 1. And all of a sudden, you can see on my left-hand side, the texture has changed. I can do all sorts of things here, which we'll get into later. I'll just do the classic animation technique here. I'm going to type into my translate ABS, oh, hold on, let me just redo that. ABS, or absolute, capital T, T-I-M-E, ABS time, .seconds. Hit enter, and I'll just do that. Basically, I'm typing this in on the X, Y, and Z transformation, and now we can see we've got animated noise also running through and hitting our vase. You can also think of this sort of top node network in a very similar way to a shader. We can add in, I can right-click, insert another operator, and I could put in like a ramp, and then we should get like this running through different colors. So if I click my first node here, and I could switch this to vertical. So now we've got like a ramp going from black up, and I could click this one and pop this on another color, set my saturation up and put it another color there. Right, so you can see that just by keeping these, by keeping this null here, we can, without changing anything in Kantan Mapper, we can start to animate and do all sorts of cool stuff. All right, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep these, but I'm going to do it another way. I'm going to show you how to do it using the images we made in Blender, because that to me is a lot faster, and we can do, I think, more complex things using this more precise data we have from Blender. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go into that folder I made of images, and I'll grab, I won't do all of them because it's a bit time consuming, but I'll grab in this vase, the smaller vase, the skull, and what else? How about the flowers? Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to make a null for each one. I'll middle mouse click here and just type in null, grab a null, and I can even copy and paste that null and then just change the connection. Because a null can only be connected to one thing, I can just directly replace these connections here. Okay, so now I have 4 nulls, and I'm going to name them again because I think it makes it easier. So let's call this one skull, this one small underscore vase, I'll call this one large underscore vase, and I'll call this one flowers. Great. So let's go back into Kantan Mapper and let's look at another way of doing this. Okay, so I'll open the Kantan Mapper window, and this time I'm going to, I'll hide that freeform. I'm going to lock it and hide it. We can just leave it there. Well, actually, I'm going to delete it. We don't need it anymore. This time I'm just going to make a quad, like a box. And I'm going to call this one skull, S-K-U-L-L. And for the texture, I'll type \project1 \skull. Hit the little cross, and I'm seeing nothing. Why is that? What have I done wrong? Skull, it should be there, \project1 \skull. Oh, there we go. Maybe I hadn't clicked the cross properly. Okay, so there's our skull. Now, you can see the great thing here is that we've got the whole image, and if I just scale it, we should be able to get a pretty good map. Now, I haven't glued my pieces down. I'm just going to take my vase out just because it's a little easier. But if your vase is still there, you can just work around it. I'm just doing this more for your benefit so you can see what I'm doing. But I'm just going to scale this skull till it fits the skull. And if they're rendered from the same orthographic camera, it should be pretty close. The only difference, of course, is that my projector is not shining absolutely straight. I'm shining my projector, pointing it down a little bit, and that's because I want to get some of the floor texture. So in order to correct for that, I can go into the handle select tool here, and I can like warp this just a little bit. If I grab that handle, I recommend like doing as much just regular scaling as possible before the warping, because once you start warping it, you can get into some really weird shapes that are hard to correct. But that to me, that's pretty good. One thing I'm going to correct is the skull looks much too bright. It might be the projector settings, maybe the contrast is too high on the projector. I could have another look at that. But one thing I'm going to do here, I'll close this, is I'm just going to show you how we can adjust contrast using Touch Designer. And you should start to see how Touch Designer, it's very similar to building a shader in Blender. So this is why I like this visual programming for artists. I'll right-click Insert Operator here. So I'll just show you that again, actually. If you right-click on a connection, you can also insert an operator that way. And I'm just going to grab HSV Adjust, Hue Saturation Value Adjust, and I'll grab another one, Insert Operator, Level. The level will give me contrast, so I should be able to turn my brightness down a little bit and then play with the contrast. Maybe turn the contrast up a little bit. And then in the HSV adjust, I'm going to turn my saturation down a little bit so it's not too bright. Okay, so now that skull looks pretty great. And we're just going to quickly repeat that for the other operators. So now that I've got the skull done, I'm going to press lock and I'm going to create a new quad, and I'm going to hide the skull because I just want to see one thing at a time. So I'll create a new quad, and this one will be my vase. So I'm going to very carefully put my big vase back in. And now I'll just type backslash project 1 backslash vase underscore large and click the little cross. And something else something's wrong there, so I'll have to go back and check in Touch Designer. I'm just going to call this one vase large also. Okay, so what have I done wrong here? Maybe I've made a spelling mistake, or what should that be called? Let's have a look. Large vase, not vase large. Lol. Okay, so it should be this texture ID. Let's try that again. So texture here, so large vase, large vase. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so you can see that the spelling mistakes in the address is really critical, and I've done it twice. All right, so let's move this one into position for the large vase, and I'll just scale it really quickly. Now you can be a little slower and more careful with this, but the cool thing about this method is that, you know, if I move the projector, or say you have to close your project and set it up again the next day, this method I think is really quick and easy to make little corrections. I'm not spending huge amounts of time mapping each shape. I'm just letting the connection we've made between Blender, Touch Designer, and our sculpture sort of take care of that. So this is why I think this is kind of a fun way to do it. And I'm not going to be too perfect here. I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so I will lock that, hide that, and now let's just keep on going through our objects. So what have we done? We've done the large vase. Let's do the small vase. So I'll make another box, just draw it randomly, and I'll call this one small underscore vase and slash project 1 slash small underscore vase. Is that what the texture is called? I can't remember. Yes, it must have been because it's worked. Okay, so now let's just grab the shape, move it onto where the small vase should be, and get it the right width and the right height. Okay, I've made it too tall, so I'll bring it down a bit. That's pretty good, and we're going to have to do the same, adjust the contrast trick. So I'll just pop into Touch Designer, and I will add on the small vase here, I'll add a level. Remember, we're just right-clicking on the connection, insert operator, and I'll add HSV adjust. So first with the level, I will bring the brightness down so we can see that pattern again, play around with the contrast, and then I'll look at my hue saturation value. I've got a feeling this might be the projector giving us such strange sort of contrast, but you know, that's something we can play around with in class on the projector settings itself. Okay, so let's quickly go back into our Kantan Mapper window. If I reveal the shapes that I have, okay, I'm just going to do one more. I'll do the flowers because they're the hardest one. So let's go back into Kantan Mapper, and I'm going to, I'll just make sure that the small vase is locked. The reason I'm clicking the lock is sometimes you can accidentally click a hidden layer and move it, and that can be annoying. So when they're locked, hopefully we shouldn't be changing them. Okay, so I'm going to make a new quad. This will be our flowers. I'll call this one flowers, hit enter, type the address, project 1 backslash flowers, and then just click the cross. Okay, there's our flowers. Click the move tool, drag it into position. And now the flowers are more complicated because it's just a more complex shape, and any warping between the projector and the angle of the projector and the shape, it'll be more obvious with a more complex shape like this. But again, with this method, I think we should be able to get it like okay, like not too bad. The main thing I'm looking at is how much extra flower we're ending up with behind, and how many gaps there are on the object of the flower. Okay, looks like I'm a little bit too big, so I'm going to scale my flower down and maybe up a tiny bit. Something like that. I'm going to do it. Yeah, look, I think I'm just going to accept that. You can spend more time kind of correcting this. I just want to get through the skills themselves, and then you can do the fine adjustment. Now, what we've got here, if I turn on my layers, my other layers, I want to see if our layering is in the correct order. Oh, it is. Okay, that's what I wanted to check. This is a cool effect as well. It's like we're seeing through the vase. So the layers in... actually, we've got one layer incorrect. See how the skull on my project here, it's going in front of the vase. So the layers here, I think they go from... The bottom is the front, if that makes sense. So if I put the vase large and I drag that down here, now the vase large is on top of the skull, and that's what we want. Okay, so I'm going to stop. Oh no, I'll do two more things. I'm going to add a background, and then I'm going to do a second short video with interactivity. Okay, so let's just add a background. I'm just going to hide all of the other shapes, and now I'm going to draw two quads. One here, and I'm going to call this floor, F-L-O-O-R, 2 O's, not 3. And I haven't made a texture for it yet, so we'll do that in a moment. But let's just warp the floor so it kind of fits the base of our object. Now you can see here's where we're getting a lot more warping, and the quality of the projection goes down a bit because it's only just being caught by the projector. Anything that's facing the projector will get a much stronger projection. This angle, it's getting a little bit less. And that's why I said earlier that I needed to have my projector at a bit of an angle, because I want to get as many of these surfaces as possible. Now here, I can't actually see where this corner's going to end. I could be very careful and try to remove my skull, or I might just leave it. Actually, I'm going to look at that edge and see if that edge can help me. There we go. That's better. Okay. And this one, it looks like I'm a little bit at the edge of my projection, just a little bit more. Okay, great. Got it. Okay, so let's just quickly make a constant and a null for that floor. So I'll close this, and let's come here. I'll just close my parameter window so we can see what's going on. Maybe I'll use this blue constant I had here, connect it to a null, and I'll just open up my parameter window, call this floor. And I'm going to copy and paste this, Control C, Control V, grab a different color, and this is going to be like the background. I'm just choosing completely arbitrary colors at the moment. Later on, we'll change this to more interesting stuff. Background, hit enter. Okay. So let's just go back into Kantan Mapper, pulse it open, and let's put the floor texture here. So \project1 \floor. Hit enter. Okay, good, that's gone blue. One thing I should have mentioned earlier, that \project1, that's just the address within our project. So project1, this is a little bit more Touch Designer basics. If I just zoom out, you'll see we'll jump into this other layer of our project, and up here that project 1 is gone. So project 1 is actually like, our project, that's just what it's called itself, and then that's going out to our perform window, which in this case is Kantan Mapper. So if I zoom back in, I'm inside project 1, and then the in front of the slash is just any object here. So that's what those addresses mean. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. Okay, so let's just I'll just lock the floor, And the floor is going to be, right at the bottom here. Oops, I didn't mean to group that. Ungroup that. I just want the floor to be at the bottom. Great. Okay, so I'm going to lock that, hide it, draw one more quad, and that's going to be our background. Let's call it background, and I can even put on our texture /project1 /background, hit enter, hit the cross. Okay, that's orange, and now I'll adjust the handles so that it's going to the background. Okay, looks like we're kind of hitting the limit of our projector a little bit. That's cool. Okay, and let's see if we can see this in the bottom corner. Good. And then I'm just looking at I'm actually looking at the little bit of background there that I can see that this handle needs to go down a little bit. Okay, nice. So now again, I'm going to lock that and I'm going to drag it so it's behind, so it's like the last one. Now if I reveal everything, we've kind of got our scene. It's still got a lot of work to do. I can still add the books and everything else, but you can do that. I'm going to stop this video here. This is our first Kantan Mapper video. And then I'm going to do a second video on how to add interactivity and add some switches so we can transform this into something else. Okay.